I'm going to welcome Simon back up to the stage. Simon's going to also have with him City of Whittlesea and City of Geelong, and you're going to be talking about some of the changes and to both processes and their approach to risk and workers' compensation in their workplaces.
So I guess we've got City of Whittlesea, Kate from City of Whittlesea and Matt from City of Grey Geelong here, two employers who have been embracing a people risk approach to the management of workers' compensation. Kate, we're coming up on three years almost now. Seems like longer. I mean, 4 years, and City of Geelong for 12 months. So probably start with, can you tell us what is it that you've seen as different by applying a people risk approach?
I'm happy to start. Yeah, so I've been with the city for about 2 years, so I've been able to see, obviously, with Aegis' support and without. I think my biggest realisation was our structure. We separate out policy and workplace relations, people partners, and injury management. So there was actually a very big disconnect between the two teams, which meant we just didn't have that lens of how can we, I guess, understand the investigation process and how that can actually impact people, and making sure that we're actually in a position that if we do need to dispute a claim, that we're in a good position to do so. So I'd say with the help of Aegis, we've reworked a lot of our processes for the better. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed.
Kate?
So I've been at Whittlesea now for coming on 7 years in October, and we had the same and I think there's probably in local government that huge disconnect between, your P&C, your safety team. One of our biggest things that we've been working on is really connecting with our safety team and also with our HR, more about what we need to see as, in workers' compensation leading up to. So like we were talking about the red flags is, learning about, okay, well, in 6-12 months, we're going to see this absolutely explode, and how are we going to be working together in actually being able to, one, probably reduce the impact, or how do we actually be able to deal with what's happening now before it gets to that point where in the past it would have already exploded and then it gets to me. And then by the time it gets to me, the relationship's done and there's nothing we can do about it.
So with how your programs were previously, we know that one of the hardest things is in workers' comp we feel out of control. We're often trying to manage things we can't. How do you feel now that you've sort of changed your approach in your control over the program in general?
We feel a lot more confident that we actually have the narrative on how we can actually manage what's happening, within our organisation, about how we actually are working with our senior leadership team, coordinators, but more specifically about how do we come together and actually create a safe space in order for us to be able to deal with where our risks are and what actually is the common theme or trend that we continue to see is where we keep getting ourselves into.
Probably another thing to point out, very similar to that, and I think it was actually a title of the slide earlier, emerging risks. So we have a monthly meeting where we actually gather around and from a IR, ER and case management perspective, really go through and consider how we're proactively working towards injury management, how our process is going, if there's things that we need to improve, change. So it's a monthly reminder to make sure that that's in the front of our mind.
Kate, do you want to give us a couple of examples of how you've applied the model and got a good outcome?
So a couple of things is when, like I've been at Whittlesea now for 7 years, I've done this for a long time at council. A lot of the things that we would see is, we would have a manager who would say, all right, here's the claim for mental health stress. This person's claiming bullying and harassment. I've had this person on a PIP. So we would go and that we would get the one side of the story, and then, again, we're completely separated from the whole. We don't see what HR have been doing or managers. And then, we would send those claim forms in. We would have one side, and then during the investigation, we would say, okay, there's no notes. The manager's actually told someone to swallow concrete. That was never told to us at the PAR, at that time. And then, or there's long-standing performance or, behavioural issues that have never been addressed. And so it's embedded within the team. So one of the things that we have been working on within our area is actually working really closely with the business partners and our managers on, if you need to address performance, this is what we need to be able to see from our side. You know, if you need to have your file notes, you need to be offering support. You know, if there is a mental health, if they're claiming that there is a mental health diagnosis, we need to be managing the mental health at the same time, instead of just, you know, your tunnel vision of performance management or putting someone on PIP or employment termination. So, you know, we've been trying to move away from tunnel vision and more focusing on that holistic approach on that risk and how we manage that risk together.
Yeah, you can't create the reasonable management action argument after the fact.
No, and that's something we've been trying to teach our organisation. It still happens, unfortunately, but that's something we continue to work on with teaching our leadership team.
Matt?
I'd have to. We got a question.
Do you have much resistance to that change of advice at supervisor level, just in terms of facing into entrenched behaviours?
Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes, depending on the area that we're working with. So if you look at it, you know, your depots, that's more of a, you know, they're band 3, band 4s, if everyone knows what that means. They're not highly educated. They don't want to listen to, you know, it's our responsibility, where they need to learn that it's their responsibility. You would probably find those really strong leaders are really open to the change and being able to work with us. You know, when we see that really strong connection and that partnership, we can actually deliver the results.
I'm going to have to refer to some notes because these are nothing...
Contemporaneous notes?
Contemporaneous notes. They are nothing shy of what I would refer to as a doozy. So we had a matter that was actually approaching its 12-month birthday. We had party hats and party poppers and everything ready, but unfortunately it just has been resolved before that. We had an incident where an employee stormed a depot with a union, and it ended up in a whole ordeal. The next day they brought the employee in just to sit down and say, look, what's gone on? What can we do to improve? Led to that employee reacting probably not like you'd expect, putting their fist through the wall, ripping doors off hinges, swearing as they left. As soon as that obviously was going down the path of formal disciplinary action, which I think would be fair to say is reasonable management action, just putting it out there, they put in a claim, a mental injury claim. So it then became very interesting as we had to go through and make sure we were ticking all the boxes for that. That they eventually exhausted all their leave, their claim was declined, so we were making sure that we were still ready for it to go on appeal. Once they'd exhausted all their leave, they must have drank the magic Kool-Aid and they were ready to come back, had full capacity. And because we were making sure we were following the process that you'd have to actually dispute from a workers' comp lens, it meant that we were in the best position possible when it went down the line of unfair dismissal or a general protection claim. I'd say that one was a bit of a doozy. Another example was we had a matter that was brought to our attention after a separate accepted claim, where a manager was micromanaging, just being inappropriate on various different levels. It actually led to them blowing up at the people partner that was in the meeting with them to raise the concerns. They also put in a mental injury claim. It was a long ordeal as well, where they exhausted all their annual leave with the hard work of the injury management team in conjunction with people partners. The reasonable management action claim was upheld, and it was even kicked out of Wickers. So,
who here's had a positive experience with Wickers? Yeah, we have historically found that it's probably 9-1 decisions against employers, maybe softening a bit at the moment. So that was, again, a good example of by starting it well before the claim and getting all the evidence together, we was able to make sure that by the time we got to Wickers, there was a lot of evidence to stack up in our favour. How has looking at people risk changed your approach or your focus on disputing claims?
I think we're probably different in this respect. So certainly there's claims that you want to support, but at the city we probably weren't disputing some claims that we should have. and it did impact our premium and prompted us to review this whole process. So I'd say we had a step in the right direction of really assessing where we did need to dispute a reasonable management action.
We are an organisation where we don't have a problem with decisions being disputed and actually looking at the claims. However, that's where what I said at the start was, if we don't understand the full story, then how can we actually support the organisation? So that's where we've come together as, we work as one, as we don't work in we don't have 2-3 different people working on one thing and everyone's doing something different. So for us, it's about, if we're there 6 to 12 months prior, we actually have the story and we can actually see what's happening, where we can actually guide, that decision on, all right, what are we doing? Have we made a mistake? Are we comfortable with how much we've put in to get to where we've gotten to ourselves here today?
So I love my stats, as you saw when I did my presentation. There's a Comcare study that actually showed that if you dispute a physical claim and it gets accepted, the person is 22% less likely to come back to work. And for mental injury claims, it's 33% less likely to come back to work. Kate, when we first started working with you, what were the majority of your claims that were still off work long term?
Mental health. We don't have City of Whittlesea don't have the best track in the past with mental health. That's again coming to the point where we were all working differently and we were getting told when they were going off what had actually happened. And then the relationship had broken. A lot of our claims are and we would all see this, we don't get a lot of claims for occupational violence. We only get probably a small amount for burnout. Majority of ours are perception of workplace bullying and harassment to manager, not between colleagues. Ours is directly linked. So you would all see that. At that time, we know that the managers are the ones, or the team leaders are the ones that drive the return to work. We can't drive return to work when there's no relationship. And this has been bubbling away for 12 months.
And so, as you're saying, now that you have a better understanding of the claims when they come in, you know when to dispute and when not to. But beforehand, you were disputing claims that were always going to be accepted, and they were turning into long-term return to work claims.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
If you're talking to another council, what would be the biggest bit of advice you'd give them about what you changed and how that's helped?
One of the biggest things I would suggest is that it's really important that you get onto your insurer from day one. Let them know what's coming in. You should have a really strong relationship with your claims teams. If you don't have a good relationship, or you've got someone as your case manager who's quite green, you've got your IMAs, you've got the ones that are higher up, really reach out to them and actually say, look, we've got this claim coming in, this is the background, this is what we need to see, and start putting in your return to work strategies in place from day one. Doesn't matter about liability or what's happening. You need to be focusing on, from day one, the return to work, and actually working with your insurer quite closely.
I'd probably say from a people and culture, from a policy and workplace relations perspective, is Andrew spoke to it really well before, that from a Fair Work Act, you don't have to be perfect, and that was very much our processes weren't as polished as they could be. I'd say the biggest advice that I could provide is really go through and review. You can have the perspective of, will this pass Fair Work, but you need to be considering how you'd go if you had to dispute a claim.
A lot of talk about managers, supervisors today. Have you seen an evolution in the managers and supervisors coming on board, or is there still pushback from certain sectors?
I'd say in general we've got managers moving in the right direction. We've probably got a bit of work to go in that area, but moving in the right direction, I'd say. And
why? Why are they starting to move in the right direction?
I'd say we're probably in a better spot now to actually address claims and, like you said, to know when there should be a dispute, when there shouldn't, and really just educating those managers as to, like you said, the risks of disputing it and how you need to address having contact with employees, not leaving them in the lurk for 6 months while they, while they're going through a claim process.
Okay.
Throw you under.
What was the question?
How are you finding managers and supervisors? Are they grasping the concept? Are they moving forward with it, or are they sticking to their old ways?
Some. We can see through recruitment, we're really employing now really strong leaders. We still, with the ones that have been at council for a really long time, that's a work in progress. But, that's where we as a department, we actually meet with each director monthly. So each directors actually know their managers aren't invited. It's just specifically, we actually report directly to the directors on how they're going with their incident reporting, their LTIs, and also where their work cover claims are coming from and where their patterns are. So the directors are able to actually work directly with their managers about, identifying, what those patterns are and, where there needs to be areas of improvement.
So, and it lacks from a lot of businesses, but what I see is when premiums get high enough inside an organisation, the senior leaders finally pay attention and start to actually push the right message back down.
Yeah.
Yep. As opposed to if it's bubbling away, it can still not be great for people.
No.
But until they hit that critical point.
No, and it's not, a dibby-dobbing session, but it's a report that's provided. So, it's that's really important from the top down bottom, where we're actually going wrong or where we're actually improving. Yeah.
What about the culture of employees? Inside council, are we getting more people willing to talk up and discuss issues earlier, or is there still a bit of a stigma about I don't want to lodge a claim, especially if it's related to mental health?
It depends on the area. So the depots, you will always see, things happen, over 2 years, or they'll, black it's just a handshake. We're all fine now, and then 2 years later, that handshake has been brought up, about the fight or the name calling or the banter. It really depends on. When you go up higher, sometimes it's based on how educated they are. I know that sounds really awful. The ones that are more educated, you see them really opening up about their mental health and what they need from the organisation. We find the ones from our depots or our band 3s. That's that more about of you have to fix it. I'm not going to do anything. You have to provide me with a safe workplace. But then we don't get, what is that to you? That's always going to be a work in progress for us, I think.
I'd say probably our culture, people are more inclined to actually report and come forward. I'd say about 6 years ago, there was probably more instances where people would resolve matters by themselves, probably using fists. Whereas now we've got multiple channels for people to raise complaints. Even confidentially, it only goes to say to workers and council. So there's different channels now, and they know that if they do report it, it will actually be looked into and investigated if it has to be.
What's, from your perspective, made your life easier from putting this together?
I think I'd say biggest thing making it easier is just more collaboration, but having those monthly meetings and making sure you have that opportunity to bounce ideas off people, and where previously everyone was more so inclined to just take it away and work it out themselves. It's amazing how you think you might be dead set on an approach or an idea or a certain scenario, but just discussing it with other people and really getting alternate perspectives can change it completely.
I do agree with that. But I think for us as well, it's about knowing where we're going wrong and actually accepting that and understanding that sometimes we need to go, we took yous on 4 years ago. Simon, we all disagree on a few things. There's a few things we won't.
A few things.
But you really need to embrace that change. You need to see where you're going wrong. When, you might think you might be doing really well as an organisation, but you need to see that you are not personally making mistakes, but, let's have a look at the small changes that we can bring in and see how, what we can actually do to change that. And you will see the results, and then you just keep on building on, all right, now this is our next stage. This is what we need to deliver, to work for our organisation and community.
And the teams you both work in, they've embraced it. They're all on board?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
And I think Kate's done a great job. And I'm going to let her off the hook now, and we'll move on to the next part. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.